The small town of Riverdale woke up to cloudy skies on Monday morning. It matched the mood in the Collins household, where 30-year-old Elena Collins sat at her kitchen table, her eyes red from crying. She stared at the untouched cup of coffee in front of her, unable to believe what had happened just 3 days ago. Her husband, Marcus, a brave firefighter loved by everyone in town, was gone forever. The accident happened during his day off. Marcus had stopped to help at a car crash on the highway. While helping the victims, another car lost control and hit him. He died instantly. Elena looked across the table at their son Liam, who was happily eating cereal, unaware that his world had changed forever. At only 2 years old, Liam kept asking where Daddy was. Each time, Elena's heart broke a little more. "Daddy work?" Liam asked again, his big brown eyes, so much like his father's, looking up at her innocently. "No, sweetie," Elena said, her voice cracking. "Daddy's not at work." How could she explain death to a toddler? The child psychologist she called yesterday said to be honest, but use simple words. Still, nothing seemed right. In the living room, Elena's mother was on the phone with the funeral home, finalizing details for tomorrow's service. The sound of her quiet voice drifted into the kitchen. "Gamma," Liam said, pointing toward the living room. He climbed down from his chair and toddled to his grandmother, who quickly ended her call to pick him up. "There's my brave boy," she said, hugging him tight. She looked at Elena over Liam's head, her eyes filled with concern. "Are you sure about bringing him tomorrow? He's so young." Elena nodded. The counselor said it might help him understand, in his own way. Besides, everyone keeps saying children are more aware than we think. Later that day, Elena sat on the floor of Marcus's closet, inhaling the scent of his clothes. Liam wandered in, driving his favorite teddy bear, a gift from Marcus on his second birthday just 3 months ago. "Daddy?" Liam asked, looking around the closet. "Daddy's not here, baby," Elena whispered. To her surprise, Liam walked to Marcus's dress uniform hanging on the door. He reached up and touched the jacket pocket. "Daddy talk," he said clearly. Elena frowned. "What do you mean, Liam?" "Daddy talk," he repeated, patting the pocket again. Elena checked the pocket but found nothing. She assumed Liam was just confused, remembering how Marcus would sometimes pull little toys or treats from his pockets for him. That night, Elena's sister came over to help with funeral clothes. As they picked out Liam's only black outfit, Elena mentioned what happened in the closet. "Kids are weird sometimes," her sister said. "Remember when I was little and told Mom about that old man in the attic even though there wasn't one? Then we found out years later that an old man had died in that house." Elena shivered. "You're not helping." "Sorry," her sister replied. "But maybe Liam just senses Marcus somehow. Who knows what children can feel that we can't?" As Elena tucked Liam into bed that night, he looked up at her with those serious eyes. "Daddy come?" he asked. "No, sweetie. But tomorrow we'll go say goodbye to Daddy." "Daddy talk," Liam insisted again before drifting off to sleep. Elena turned on the night light and closed the door halfway. She had no idea that tomorrow at the funeral home, her son's strange behavior would lead to a discovery that would change everything. The morning of the funeral arrived with a gentle rain that tapped on the windows of the Collins home. Elena stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the black dress she never thought she'd wear so young. Her mother appeared in the doorway, already dressed and holding Liam, who was fussing in his little black suit. "He doesn't want to wear the tie," her mother said, struggling to keep the squirming toddler still. Elena took Liam from her mother's arms. "It's okay, Mom. He doesn't need the tie." She removed the small clip-on tie and Liam immediately calmed down. He touched her face with his small hand, wiping away a tear she hadn't noticed. "Mama sad," he said simply. "Yes, baby. Mama is sad today," she replied, holding him close. Elena's brother Mike arrived to drive them to the funeral home. The car ride was silent except for Liam, who kept looking out the window and occasionally saying "Daddy" when they passed the fire station where Marcus had worked. The parking lot at Riverside Funeral Home was already full when they arrived. Firefighters in dress uniforms stood in a line near the entrance, ready to honor their fallen brother. The fire chief, a tall man with gray hair and sad eyes, approached Elena as she stepped out of the car. "The department is here for you, Elena. Anything you need, just ask," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Inside, the viewing room was filled with flowers and photos of Marcus. A large portrait of him in his uniform stood next to the closed coffin. Alana had decided on a closed casket after the accident, wanting to remember Marcus as he had been in life. People lined up to offer condolences, many stopping to pat Liam's head or comment on how much he looked like his father. The little boy stayed close to Alina, unusually quiet for an active toddler. During a quiet moment, Alina sat in the front row, holding Liam on her lap. He had been well behaved, but she could feel him getting restless. She pulled out a small snack and some juice to keep him occupied. That's when it happened. Liam suddenly sat up straight on her lap, pointing directly at his father's coffin. "Daddy," he exclaimed. "Daddy talk." Alina tried to quiet him. "Sure, sweetie. Remember what we talked about? Daddy is sleeping." But Liam would not be calmed. He wiggled off her lap and toddled straight to the coffin, which was set on a low platform. "Daddy talk," he insisted, reaching up as high as he could, his little fingers just barely touching the polished wood. Alina's mother rushed over. "I told you he's too young for this," she whispered, trying to pull Liam away. But the boy clung to the side of the coffin, becoming more agitated. "Daddy talk here," he said louder, patting a specific spot on the side of the coffin. By now, several people were watching the scene. Alina felt embarrassed but also curious. Liam had never acted this way before. Marcus's best friend and fellow firefighter, Tom, walked over and knelt beside Liam. "What's up, little buddy? What are you trying to tell us?" "Daddy talk in pocket," Liam said, looking at Tom with absolute certainty. Alina and Tom exchanged confused glances. "Pocket?" Alina asked. Liam nodded vigorously. "Daddy jacket pocket, talk." Tom looked at Alina. Marcus was buried in his dress uniform, right? Alina nodded, a strange feeling coming over her. "Yes, with his medals and everything." "I helped dress him," Tom said quietly. "I don't remember checking his pockets. It's not standard procedure." Alina's heart began to race. Could there actually be something in Marcus's pocket? Something that Liam somehow knew about? "We should check," Tom suggested. "Would that be okay?" Alina looked at her son, who was still pointing insistently at the coffin. "Yes," she decided. "We need to know what he's trying to tell us." The funeral director was called over, and a decision was made that would lead to an extraordinary discovery. The funeral director, Mr. Simmons, a thin man with kind eyes and gray hair, listened carefully as Alina explained the situation. His face showed concern as he glanced at little Liam, who was still standing near the coffin, occasionally patting it and saying "Daddy talk." "It's not a common request," Mr. Simmons said, lowering his voice. "But given the circumstances, I think we can make an exception. Would you prefer to do this privately?" Alina nodded gratefully. "Yes, please. Just family." Mr. Simmons cleared the room politely, explaining there would be a short break before the service continued. Elena's mother, her brother Mike, and Tom stayed behind with Elena and Liam. The funeral director asked two of his assistants to help. "We'll need to open the casket partially," Mr. Simmons explained. "Just enough to check the jacket pocket. Are you sure you want to do this?" Alina looked at Liam, who was watching them with those big, serious eyes. "Yes," she said firmly. "My son is trying to tell us something important." The assistants carefully began to open the casket. Elena turned away, not wanting to see Marcus this way. Tom put his hand on her shoulder in support. "Let me check the pocket for you," he offered. "You don't need to look." But Liam had other ideas. As soon as the casket was partially opened, he broke free from his grandmother's hold and ran to the edge, standing on his tiptoes to see inside. "Liam, no!" Elena cried, rushing forward. But Liam wasn't upset or frightened at seeing his father. Instead, he pointed directly at Marcus's chest. "There. Daddy talk there." Tom gently moved Liam aside and carefully checked the inside pocket of Marcus's dress uniform jacket. His face changed as his fingers touched something. "There is something here," he said, surprise in his voice. Carefully, he pulled out a small black object about the size of a credit card but thicker. "It's a voice recorder," Tom said, handing it to Elena. "The kind Marcus used sometimes to take notes after fire inspections." Elena stared at the small device in her hand. Her fingers trembled as she turned it over. It was Marcus's work recorder, one she had seen many times before. But what was it doing in his funeral suit? Play, Liam said, pointing at the recorder and looking up at his mother. Daddy talk. The funeral director quickly closed the casket and stepped back, giving the family privacy. Elena's mother moved closer, putting her arm around Elena's shoulders as she examined the device. The battery light is still on, Elena whispered. It still works. Do you want to listen to it now? Her brother Mike asked gently. Elena looked around at the empty funeral home, at her family's concerned faces, and finally at Liam, who was watching her expectantly. How did he know about this? How could he possibly have known what was in his father's pocket? Yes, she said finally. I need to know what's on it. With shaking fingers, Elena pressed the play button. There was a moment of silence, and then, filling the quiet room, came Marcus's voice, strong, clear, and very much alive. Hey there, if you're listening to this. Marcus's recorded voice began. Liam's face lit up with a bright smile. Daddy, he exclaimed, clapping his small hands together. Elena could barely breathe. Tears streamed down her face as she listened to her husband's voice. Tom had tears in his eyes too, and even the funeral director looked moved. I had a close call at work today, Marcus continued on the recording. And it got me thinking about some things I need to say to you, Elena, and to our little man Liam. Elena pressed pause, overwhelmed. I can't listen to this here, she whispered. Not now, not like this. Her mother nodded. Take your time, dear. This is extraordinary. Mr. Simmons stepped forward. We can delay the service for a few minutes if you need some time. Elena looked down at Liam, who was now hugging her legs, looking up at her with a smile. Daddy talked to Mama, he said simply. What was on this recording? And how had Liam known about it? Elena knew she needed to find out, but she also knew that whatever message Marcus had left would change everything. The funeral director guided Elena and her family to a small private room at the back of the funeral home. It was simply furnished with a sofa, a few chairs, and a small table with a box of tissues. Elena sat down with Liam on her lap, clutching the voice recorder in her hand. Take all the time you need, Mr. Simmons said kindly as he closed the door. Elena's mother sat beside her while Mike and Tom took the chairs across from them. Everyone's eyes were on the small black device in Elena's hand. I don't understand, Elena whispered. How did Liam know about this? We never told him. Her mother shook her head. Children sense things we can't explain sometimes. My grandmother used to say that little ones are still connected to the other side. Elena looked down at Liam, who was waiting patiently, his eyes fixed on the recorder. She took a deep breath and pressed play again. I had a close call at work today. Marcus's voice continued from where she had paused it. And it got me thinking about some things I need to say to you, Elena, and to our little man Liam. I know this might seem strange, recording this, but after what happened at the Carson Street fire, well, it made me think about what would happen if I didn't come home one day. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. The Carson Street fire had been just 3 weeks before the accident. Marcus had never told her there was a close call. I'm keeping this recorder in my dress uniform pocket, Marcus continued. I know it sounds morbid, but if anything happens to me, that's the suit they'll bury me in. I just need to know you'll hear these words. Tom shook his head in disbelief. He never said anything about a close call to any of us at the station. That's Marcus, Mike said, always protecting everyone from worry. On the recording, Marcus cleared his throat. First, Elena, my beautiful wife. If you're listening to this, it means I'm gone, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted to leave you and Liam. You two are everything to me. Liam looked up at his mother's tears and patted her cheek. Daddy loved Mama, he said. Elena hugged him tighter as Marcus's voice continued. I need you to know that meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. Remember that day at the county fair when I won you that ridiculous giant teddy bear? You told me it was too big for your apartment, but you kept it anyway. I knew then that you were the one. Elena smiled through her tears. The giant bear had taken up half her bedroom in her tiny apartment. She had kept it until they moved in together, and then it had become part of their living room furniture. I made this recording because I need you to know how much I love you both. I need you to know that whatever happened to me, my last thoughts were of you. There was a pause on the recording, and they could hear Marcus taking a deep breath. And Liam, my son, you probably won't remember me. and that breaks my heart. But I need you to know that your dad loves you more than anything in this world. You're going to grow up to be an amazing person. I just know it." Liam smiled at the recorder as if he could see his father. "Love Daddy too," he said clearly. "There's something else," Marcus continued. "In my locker at the station, there's a metal box. The combination is our anniversary, 517. Inside are letters I've been writing to Liam since the day he was born. One for each birthday until he turns 18. Elena gasped. She had no idea Marcus had been doing this. "Tom has a key to my locker," Marcus added. "He'll help you get them." Tom nodded, wiping away tears. "I didn't know what was in the box, but I knew it was important to him." The recording continued, but suddenly the voice changed. It was no longer the calm, measured voice from before. "Elena, I have to go now. Alarm sounding. I'll finish this later. Just remember, if anything happens, look for the signs. I'll find a way to let you know I'm still watching over you both. I promise." The recording ended abruptly with the sound of sirens in the background. Elena stared at the recorder, her mind racing. What signs was Marcus talking about? And how had Liam known about the recorder in his father's pocket? She looked down at her son, who was now smiling peacefully. "Did Daddy tell you about this?" Elena asked gently. Liam shook his head. "Daddy showed me, in my dream." Elena stared at her son, goosebumps rising on her arms. "What do you mean, Liam? What did Daddy show you in your dream?" Liam looked up at her with those innocent eyes. "Daddy came in my sleep. He said find the black box so Mama not cry." He pointed to the recorder. "He showed me in his special clothes." The room fell silent. Elena exchanged looks with her mother, who crossed herself quietly. Tom shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Kids have active imaginations," Mike suggested gently. "But this is different." Elena wasn't sure what to believe, but she couldn't deny that Liam had somehow known about the recorder. And now she desperately wanted to hear more of Marcus's messages. "We should go back to the service," her mother said, checking her watch. "People are waiting." Elena nodded, tucking the recorder safely into her purse. "Yes, let's finish saying goodbye to Daddy," she told Liam. The rest of the funeral passed in a blur for Elena. She went through the motions, accepting condolences, listening to beautiful speeches about Marcus, watching as his fellow firefighters carried his coffin to the hearse. Throughout it all, Liam stayed unusually calm, occasionally whispering "Daddy" here when no one else could hear. After the burial, everyone gathered at Elena's house. Friends and family brought food, shared stories about Marcus, and offered support. Elena appreciated their kindness, but she found herself watching the clock, waiting for everyone to leave so she could listen to the rest of the recordings. Late that evening, after most guests had gone and Liam was tucked into bed, Elena's mother found her sitting alone in the kitchen. "You should get some rest," she said, placing a hand on Elena's shoulder. "I can't, Mom. I need to check if there's more on the recorder." Her mother nodded. "I understand. Do you want me to stay with you?" "No, I think I need to do this alone," Elena replied. "But thank you for everything today." After her mother left, Elena made herself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. She placed the recorder in front of her and pressed the fast-forward button, skipping past the message she had already heard. To her surprise, there were several more recordings. The first one was dated just 2 days after the previous message. "Hey, it's me again." Marcus's voice filled the quiet kitchen. "I didn't get to finish the other day. That alarm was for the Wilson Street apartment fire. Everyone got out okay, thank God." Elena closed her eyes, letting his voice wash over her. It was almost like having him there. "I was thinking more about those signs I mentioned," Marcus continued. "If I'm gone, look for the blue jays. Remember how we always said they were good luck because we saw one on our first date? Whenever you see one, especially if it seems to be watching you, that's me checking in." Tears streamed down Elena's face. They had indeed called blue jays their special bird. One had landed on their table during their first date at an outdoor cafe, stealing a piece of Marcus's muffin. And Liam's bear, one I got him for his birthday, there's something special about it. Squeeze the left paw and hold it for 3 seconds. Elena frowned. Liam's teddy bear? She glanced at the clock. It was past midnight, but she couldn't wait. She quietly went upstairs to Liam's room. The little boy was fast asleep, his teddy bear clutched tightly in his arms. Very gently, Elena eased the bear away. Liam stirred but didn't wake. She took the bear to the hallway and squeezed its left paw, holding it as Marcus had instructed. After 3 seconds, the bear's stomach lit up with a soft blue glow, and Marcus's voice came out, much softer than on the recorder. "Hey buddy, Daddy loves you to the moon and back." Elena gasped, her hand covering her mouth to stifle her sobs. Marcus had never shown her this feature of the bear. Somehow, he had prepared all these messages without telling anyone. She returned to the kitchen and continued listening to the recorder, finding 3 more short messages. In the last one, recorded the very morning of his accident, Marcus said something that made her blood run cold. "Had another strange dream last night. I was standing by a highway, watching cars crash. Felt so real, probably just stress, but if anything happens to me, Elena, remember to check my uniform pocket. I'll make sure you find this somehow, I promise." Elena sat frozen in her chair. Had Marcus somehow known? And had he really visited Liam in a dream to help them find the recorder? She jumped as she heard a small voice behind her. "Daddy says don't be scared, Mama." Liam stood in the doorway in his pajamas, hugging his teddy bear. Elena quickly wiped her tears and went to Liam, kneeling down to his level. "Sweetie, what are you doing up? It's very late." "Daddy told me to come," Liam said matter-of-factly, clutching his teddy bear. "He says there's more." A chill ran down Elena's spine. She tried to stay calm, though her heart was racing. "More what, baby?" "More things to find," Liam answered, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "In the special box." Elena remembered the metal box Marcus had mentioned in his recording, the one in his locker at the fire station. Tom had promised to bring it to her tomorrow. "Did you have another dream about Daddy?" she asked gently. Liam nodded. "Daddy is shiny now. He has wings, but they're not like birds." He yawned. He said, "Look at the pictures." "What pictures, Liam?" But Liam was already falling asleep, standing up, his little body swaying. Elena picked him up and carried him back to bed. As she tucked him in, she noticed something clutched in his hand besides the teddy bear. "What's that, sweetie?" she asked, gently opening his fingers. It was a small, folded piece of paper. Elena carefully took it and unfolded it. Inside was a child's drawing of 3 stick figures, a tall one with wings, a medium one with long hair, and a small one. Above them was a blue bird. Written at the bottom in Marcus's handwriting were the words, "We are always together." Elena gasped. This wasn't one of Liam's drawings. He was too young to write those words, and she had never seen this paper before. "Liam, where did you get this?" she whispered. But Liam was already fast asleep, his breathing deep and even. Elena couldn't sleep after that. She sat in the living room until dawn, looking at the drawing and listening to Marcus's recordings over and over. When the first light of morning appeared, she called Tom. "I need to get that box today," she told him, "as soon as possible." Tom arrived at 9 o'clock, carrying a metal lockbox about the size of a shoebox. He had dark circles under his eyes. "I couldn't wait either," he admitted, handing her the box. "I went to the station last night after the funeral and got it for you." Elena's hands trembled as she entered the combination. 517, her and Marcus's anniversary. The lock clicked open. Inside were 18 envelopes, each labeled with Liam's name and a different age from 3 to 20. There was also a small photo album and a USB drive. "He was always taking pictures," Tom said. "Said he wanted Liam to know what his dad was like even if." His voice trailed off. Elena opened the photo album. The first page showed Marcus holding newborn Liam in the hospital. The next pages were filled with everyday moments. Marcus giving Liam a bath, playing in the park, sleeping together on the couch. But when Elena turned to the last page, her breath caught. It was a photo of herself and Liam she had never seen before, taken just a week ago in their backyard. They were smiling at something above the camera, and at the top of the photo was a blur of blue, a blue jay that had flown into the shot. On the back of the photo, Marcus had written, "My two loves watching our special bird. If they only knew it was watching them too." "Tom," Elena whispered, showing him the photo. "This was taken last week. How is this possible?" Tom stared at the picture, his face pale. "I don't know, but Marcus was acting strange that last week. He kept talking about making memories, like he knew time was short." Elena picked up the USB drive. Will you stay while I check what's on this? Tom nodded, and they moved to the computer in the small home office. Elena plugged in the drive, and a single video file appeared. The thumbnail showed Marcus sitting in this very room. He made a video, she said, her voice barely audible. Just as she was about to press play, they heard Liam calling from upstairs. Mama, the bird is here. Daddy's bird. Elena and Tom rushed upstairs to find Liam standing on his bed, pointing excitedly out the window. There, perched on the windowsill, was a bright blue jay, staring directly into the room. As they watched, the bird tapped 3 times on the glass, then spread its wings and flew away. Elena and Tom stood frozen by the window, watching the blue jay disappear into the morning sky. Liam bounced on his bed, clapping his small hands. Daddy came, he turned into a bird, Liam exclaimed happily. Elena picked him up and held him close, not knowing what to say. Was this just a coincidence? Blue jays were common in their neighborhood, but the way this one had tapped on the glass and seemed to look right at them felt different. Let's get you some breakfast, she said to Liam, trying to sound normal despite the goosebumps on her arms. Downstairs, Elena's mother had let herself in with her spare key and was making pancakes. She noticed their pale faces immediately. What happened? You both look like you've seen a ghost, she said, flipping a pancake. Tom explained about the blue jay while Elena settled Liam at the table with some apple juice. Her mother listened, her expression changing from skepticism to wonder. Your grandmother always said there are more things in heaven and earth than we can understand, she finally said, serving Liam a small pancake shaped like a teddy bear. After breakfast, while Liam was distracted by cartoons and Elena's mother watched him, Elena and Tom returned to the office to watch the video Marcus had left. Elena's hand shook as she clicked play. Marcus appeared on screen, sitting at the desk in their home office. He was wearing his favorite red flannel shirt, and Elena realized with a jolt that he had recorded this the night before his accident. She remembered him saying he had work to catch up on after she went to bed. Hey, Elena. Marcus began, his face serious but calm. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and somehow you found the recorder in my uniform pocket. He smiled slightly. I'm betting Liam helped you find it. Kids are more tuned in to these things than adults. Elena and Tom exchanged shocked glances. I know this sounds crazy, Marcus continued, but for the past month, I've been having these dreams, so vivid they feel real. In them, I'm watching you and Liam from somewhere else, somewhere peaceful. At first, I thought it was just stress from work, but then things from my dreams started happening in real life. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, a nervous habit Elena knew well. Remember last week when I suddenly suggested we go to the lake? It was because I dreamed about us having a perfect day there. And we did, didn't we? Liam fed the ducks for the first time. Elena remembered that day clearly. It had been spontaneous and perfect, one of their last happy days together. There's something else, Marcus said, his voice dropping lower. In these dreams, I saw how I would die. The highway, the crash, all of it. I tried to tell myself it's just anxiety, but deep down, I know. Tom made a small choking sound. He knew, he whispered. He actually knew. I'm not telling you this to scare you, Marcus continued. I'm telling you because I want you to know that if these dreams are real, if what I'm seeing is really going to happen, then I also know what comes after. His face softened. And Elena, it's beautiful. I'll still be with you and Liam, just in a different way. He leaned closer to the camera. Watch for the blue jays. I'll send them to let you know I'm near. And Liam, I'll probably be able to sense me more than you can. Children are open to these things. Elena thought of Liam pointing at the coffin, knowing exactly where the recorder was. She thought of his drawing and his dreams of his father. I've left everything ready, the letters for Liam's birthdays, the voice in his teddy bear, this video. Not because I want to die, but because I want you both to know that love doesn't end. It just changes form. Marcus wiped away a tear. I don't know if any of this makes sense. Maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe tomorrow I'll wake up and delete this whole video and laugh at myself. He smiled sadly. But if you're watching this, then I was right. And if I was right about this, then I'm right about still being with you, even if you can't see me. The video ended with Marcus blowing a kiss to the camera. Elena sat back in her chair, tears streaming down her face. Tom was openly crying too. He knew? Tom repeated. How is that possible? Outside, the sound of Liam's laughter drifted in from the living room, followed by his clear voice. Look, Gamma. Daddy Bird is back. 1 year had passed since Marcus's funeral. The seasons had changed, bringing new growth to the garden he had loved so much. Alana sat on the back porch swing, watching Liam, now 3 years old, chase butterflies across the lawn. The red fire truck toy Tom had given him for his birthday lay forgotten in the grass as something more interesting caught his attention. Mama, look! Liam pointed excitedly at the bird feeder hanging from the old oak tree. A bright blue jay had landed there, its feathers shimmering in the sunlight. Elena smiled. I see him, sweetie. Is that Daddy's bird? Liam nodded seriously. He comes every day now. It was true. For the past year, blue jays had become a constant presence in their lives. They appeared at important moments. Liam's birthday, their wedding anniversary, and sometimes on ordinary days when Elena felt particularly sad or overwhelmed. The doorbell rang, interrupting their peaceful afternoon. Alana went to answer it, finding Tom standing on the porch with a small wrapped package. Hey, he said, giving her a quick hug. I found something else at the station. It was behind Marcus's old locker when they were renovating last week. Elena invited him in, and they sat at the kitchen table while Liam continued playing outside under the watchful eye of the blue jay. What is it? Elena asked, looking at the package. I'm not sure, Tom admitted. It has your name on it, in Marcus's handwriting. Elena carefully unwrapped the package to find a small wooden box with her name carved on top. Inside was a silver charm bracelet and a folded note. With trembling fingers, she opened the note and read. Elena, I meant to give this to you on our next anniversary. Each charm represents a special moment in our life together. The firefighter hat for when we met, the teddy bear for our first date, the house for our home, the baby carriage for Liam. The last charm, the wing, is for the future, a reminder that I'll always be watching over you both. Love always, Marcus. Elena had examined the bracelet through her tears. It was beautiful, each charm perfectly chosen. But it was the wing charm that made her breath catch. It was identical to how Liam had described his father's wings in his dreams. Not like birds. How did he have time to plan all this? Tom wondered aloud. It's like he knew exactly what would happen and when. Elena slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. I've stopped questioning it, she said softly. Some things can't be explained. That night, as she tucked Liam into bed, he asked for his special bedtime routine. Daddy message first, then story, he insisted. Elena squeezed the teddy bear's paw, and Marcus's recorded voice filled the quiet room. Hey buddy, Daddy loves you to the moon and back. Liam smiled sleepily. Now the letter. Elena reached for the box where she kept Marcus's letters. She had decided to read one to Liam each month rather than waiting for birthdays. Tonight, she chose one labeled simply, When You Miss Me. Dear Liam, she read. Everyone leaves something behind when they go. I left you my smile, my love for helping others, and my eyes. Mom always says you have my eyes. When you look in the mirror, that's me looking back at you. When you feel brave, that's me inside your heart. When you hear stories about me, that's me living on in memories. I'm never really gone as long as you remember me. By the time she finished reading, Liam was almost asleep. Daddy's with the stars now, he murmured. But he comes back to check on us. Yes, he does, Elena whispered, kissing his forehead. Later, sitting alone on the porch swing, Elena watched the night sky fill with stars. She touched the wing charm on her bracelet and thought about everything that had happened in the past year. Marcus had somehow known he was going to die, yet instead of fear, he had chosen to leave behind love in 100 small ways. The recordings, the letters, the teddy bear, the bracelet, each a thread connecting him to his family even after he was gone. A soft breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree, and Elena felt a sense of peace wash over her. She no longer questioned how Liam had known about the recorder in the coffin. Some connections, she had learned, were beyond ordinary understanding. Just then, she heard a tap on the window behind her. Turning, she saw a blue jay perched on the sill, watching her with intelligent eyes despite the late hour. It tapped 3 times, just as it had done that first morning after the funeral. Elena smiled through her tears. Good night, Marcus, she whispered. We love you too. The bird spread its wings and flew into the night, a flash of blue against the starry sky.